Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The endless void of space loomed ominously as the last human stronghold, Fortress Excalibur, orbited a dying star. The fortress, a massive structure of interlocking metal plates, bristled with weaponry and defense systems, its walls scarred from countless battles. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, a palpable sense of impending doom hanging over the soldiers who remained. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, their homeworlds destroyed, their fleets decimated. What remained of the human race had consolidated here, at the edge of the galaxy, where the light of the dying star flickered weakly, a dim reminder of the life that once thrived in this corner of the universe. Commander Alex Harper stood in the command center, his eyes scanning the holographic display that hovered in front of him. The image showed the approaching enemy fleet, a swarm of alien ships moving with terrifying precision. The Zethar, a ruthless alien species, had pursued humanity across the stars, relentless in their quest to exterminate every last human. Harper's jaw tightened as he studied the enemy formations. The Zethar were not just a formidable enemy, they were a nightmare come to life, their advanced technology and sheer numbers overwhelming every defense humanity had thrown at them. But Harper was not a man easily daunted. He had earned his reputation as a legendary commander through countless battles, always one step ahead of the enemy, always finding a way to turn the tide. Even now, with humanity on the brink of extinction, Harper's mind was working furiously, searching for any weakness he could exploit, any flaw in the Zethar's seemingly invincible armor. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, his second-in-command, approached him, her face pale but resolute. "Commander, we've detected multiple Zethar scouts probing our outer defenses. They're testing us, looking for weak points." Harper nodded, his eyes never leaving the holographic display. "They're methodical, as always. They want to know exactly what they're up against before they commit to a full assault." Mitchell swallowed, glancing at the display. "We've lost so many already. If they break through here, they won't," Harper said firmly. "Not while I'm still breathing." He turned to face his team. Sergeant Marcus Kane, a grizzled veteran with scars etched across his face, stood beside Mitchell, his massive frame a comforting presence in the room. Kane had been with Harper through the worst of the fighting, a rock-solid soldier who never wavered, no matter how dire the situation. "Sergeant, I want our best marksmen stationed at the outer perimeter," Harper ordered. "The Zethar scouts need to be taken out before they can relay any information back to the main fleet. We can't afford to let them find a weak spot." Kane nodded, his expression grim. "Consider it done, sir. Those scouts won't get past us." Harper watched as Kane and Mitchell left the command center to carry out his orders, then turned back to the display. The Zethar fleet was getting closer, their ships moving in perfect formation, like a school of predatory fish closing in on their prey. He could almost feel the weight of the entire human race resting on his shoulders. The thought should have been crushing, but instead, it steeled his resolve. He had been in impossible situations before and had always found a way out. This time would be no different. The first wave of the Zethar attack came hours later. Harper stood in the command center, watching the battle unfold on the screens around him. The Zethar ships, sleek and black, darted through the void, their weapons slicing through space with deadly accuracy. But the Vanguard, Harper's elite unit, was ready. The outer defenses lit up with laser fire, and the Zethar scouts were picked off one by one as they attempted to probe the fortress's defenses, but the Zethar were nothing if not relentless. For every scout that fell, another two seemed to take its place. Harper's eyes narrowed as he noticed a pattern in the enemy's movements. The Zethar were testing them, yes, but they were also learning, adapting to human tactics with each passing moment. It was like fighting against an enemy that was constantly evolving, becoming more dangerous with every engagement. "Lieutenant, what's the status of our defenses?" Harper asked, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around him. Mitchell's hands flew over the controls, bringing up a detailed report on the holographic display. "Shields are holding for now, but we're taking heavy fire. The Zethar are focusing their attacks on the north and east quadrants. If they keep this up, we might have to reinforce those areas." Harper nodded. "Do it. And keep an eye on the western perimeter, they're trying to divide our attention." The battle raged on, and the hours bled into each other. Harper's team fought with everything they had, but the Zethar's relentless assault was taking its toll. The fortress shook with each impact, and reports of casualties began to filter in. Harper's expression remained stoic, but inside, he felt the weight of every loss. These were his people, the last remnants of a once great civilization, and he was determined to protect them at all costs. "Commander, we've got a situation." Kane's voice crackled over the comms, and Harper's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Sergeant?" Harper demanded. "The Zethar, they've breached the western perimeter. We're being overrun, requesting immediate reinforcements." Harper's mind raced. The western perimeter was one of their weaker spots, but he hadn't expected the Zethar to exploit it so soon. If they lost control of that area, the entire fortress could fall. "Hold the line, Sergeant," Harper ordered, his voice steel. "I'm sending reinforcements your way." He turned to Mitchell. "Get every available unit to the western perimeter. We can't let the Zethar break through." Mitchell nodded and relayed the orders, her face set with determination. Harper watched as the situation on the western perimeter played out on the screens. The Zethar were pouring in, their sleek black forms overwhelming the human defenders. Kane and his soldiers were fighting valiantly, but they were outnumbered, and the Zethar were ruthless. As Harper directed the reinforcements, his mind continued to work on the problem at hand. The Zethar were learning, adapting faster than he'd anticipated. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they found a way to breach the fortress entirely. He needed to find a way to turn the tide, and fast. Then, in the midst of the chaos, an idea began to take shape. It was risky, but if it worked, it could change the course of the battle, and possibly the war. Harper's eyes narrowed as he focused on the enemy's movements, searching for any sign of a pattern, a weakness he could exploit. "Lieutenant," Harper said, his voice low, "get me a detailed scan of the Zethar fleet. I want to know everything about their command structure, their communications." Before he could finish, a massive explosion rocked the fortress, nearly knocking Harper off his feet. The screens flickered, and alarms blared as the lights dimmed. "Commander, we've lost power to the north quadrant." Mitchell shouted over the noise. "The Zethar must have hit the main reactor. They're targeting our infrastructure." Harper clenched his fists. The Zethar were trying to cripple them from the inside, to weaken their defenses before launching the final assault. They were playing a long game, one that Harper knew all too well. But two could play at that game. "Mitchell, reroute power from the secondary generators to the north quadrant," Harper ordered, his mind working furiously. "And get that scan done. I need to know what we're dealing with." As Mitchell and the rest of the team scrambled to carry out his orders, Harper focused on the holographic display. The Zethar fleet was vast, their ships moving with eerie precision, like pieces on a chessboard. But even the most powerful fleet had a weak point, a chink in the armor that could be exploited. Harper just needed to find it. The minutes ticked by as the battle raged on, the fortress trembling under the onslaught. Harper's eyes never left the display, his mind analyzing every piece of data, every movement the enemy made. And then, suddenly, he saw it, a pattern in the Zethers' attacks, a subtle shift in their formation that hinted at something deeper. "Lieutenant, focus the scan on the largest Zether ship," Harper said, his voice sharp. "I want to know what's inside that thing." Mitchell worked quickly, and moments later, the scan results appeared on the display. Harper's eyes widened as he studied the data. The Zethers' largest ship, a massive battleship known as the Nexus, was the key to their entire operation. Deep within the ship, heavily guarded and fortified, was the Zethers' central intelligence, a hive mind that controlled the entire fleet. "If we take out the central intelligence, we could cripple their entire fleet," Harper murmured, his mind racing. "But getting to it won't be easy." He turned to his team, his expression resolute. "We need to infiltrate the Nexus and destroy the central intelligence. It's our only shot at turning this battle around." Kane, who had just returned from the front lines, looked at Harper in disbelief. "Infiltrate the Nexus? That's a suicide mission, Commander." "Maybe," Harper replied, his voice steady. "But it's also our only chance. If we don't take out that central intelligence, the Zether will keep coming, and they'll eventually break through our defenses." Mitchell nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "How do you propose we get inside the Nexus?" Harper's mind was already working on a plan. "We'll take the Phantom, our stealth ship. It's equipped with the latest cloaking technology. If we're careful, we can get close enough to board the Nexus without being detected. Once inside, we'll have to fight our way to the central intelligence and plant an explosive device. If we time it right, we can escape before the ship is destroyed." Kane shook his head, his expression grim. "That's a hell of a gamble, Commander. But I'm with you." "Good," Harper said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "We'll need the best soldiers we've got for this mission. Mitchell, you'll be coming with us too. I need your tactical expertise." Mitchell nodded, her face pale but determined. "I won't let you down, sir." Harper placed a hand on her shoulder, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "I know you won't. We're all in this together." As they prepared for the mission, Harper couldn't help but think about the lives that depended on its success. The people in Fortress Excalibur, the remnants of humanity, had placed their trust in him, and he was determined not to let them down. The thought of failure was unbearable, but Harper had learned long ago that fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. He pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. The Phantom, a sleek black ship with angular lines and an almost predatory appearance, was waiting in the hangar. Harper and his team suited up, their armor reinforced with the best technology humanity had left. The weight of the mission pressed down on them, but they moved with a sense of purpose, their minds focused on the goal. As they boarded the Phantom, Harper took one last look at Fortress Excalibur. The fortress had been their home, their last bastion of hope in a galaxy that had turned against them. If this mission failed, it would be the end. But Harper refused to let that happen. He had led his people through countless battles, and he would lead them through this one too. "Ready?" Harper asked, his voice calm. Kane grunted in affirmation, his massive form settling into the gunner's seat. "Let's do this." Mitchell nodded, her hands steady as she took the controls. "Ready, sir." Harper strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat, his eyes focused on the controls. "All right, let's move out." The Phantom's engines hummed to life, and the ship lifted off the hangar floor, gliding smoothly through the air. As they exited the hangar, the ship's cloaking system activated, rendering them invisible to enemy sensors. Harper watched the display as the Phantom slipped past the Zephyr fleet, its stealth systems working perfectly. The journey to the Nexus was tense, every second feeling like an eternity. The Zephyr ships were everywhere, their sleek black forms cutting through space like knives. But the Phantom remained undetected, its cloaking technology holding strong. As they approached the Nexus, Harper's heart began to race. The massive battleship loomed ahead, its size dwarfing everything around it. The ship was a fortress in its own right, bristling with weapons and heavily armored. Getting inside would be the easy part, getting out alive would be the real challenge. "Lieutenant, bring us in close to the lower docking bay," Harper ordered. "We'll breach the hull and make our way to the Central Intelligence from there." Mitchell nodded, her hands moving over the controls with precision. The Phantom glided silently toward the Nexus, its cloaking system holding strong. As they neared the docking bay, Harper's eyes scanned the exterior of the ship, searching for any signs of activity. The Zephyr were meticulous, but they weren't expecting an infiltration. Harper was counting on that element of surprise. "Activating hull breacher," Mitchell said, her voice steady. The Phantom's underside opened, revealing a cylindrical device designed to cut through even the toughest armor. The device latched onto the Nexus's hull, and a moment later, a small hole was cut into the ship's exterior. "Breach successful," Mitchell reported. "Let's move," Harper said, his voice firm. He unstrapped himself from the co-pilot's seat and grabbed his weapon, a sleek rifle capable of firing high-energy pulses. Kane and Mitchell followed suit, their expressions grim but determined. The breach led into a narrow maintenance corridor, dimly lit and eerily quiet. Harper led the way, his weapon at the ready, as they made their way deeper into the ship. The air was thick with tension, every creak and groan of the ship's structure setting their nerves on edge. As they moved through the corridors, they encountered their first resistance, a group of Zephyr soldiers patrolling the area. The aliens were tall and lean, their bodies covered in sleek black armor that seemed to blend into the shadows. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their movements were precise, almost mechanical. Harper raised his weapon, his finger hovering over the trigger. The Zephyr soldiers hadn't noticed them yet, but it was only a matter of time. "Take them out." Silently, Harper whispered. Kane nodded, his massive frame moving with surprising agility as he approached the nearest Zephyr soldier. With a swift motion, he grabbed the soldier from behind and snapped its neck, the alien's body crumpling to the ground without a sound. Mitchell followed suit, taking out another soldier with a well-placed shot to the head. Harper moved quickly, dispatching the remaining soldiers before they could raise the alarm. The corridor was clear, but Harper knew they couldn't let their guard down. The Zephyr were everywhere, and any mistake could cost them their lives. They continued deeper into the ship, the air growing colder as they approached the Central Intelligence Chamber. The corridor widened into a massive chamber, filled with pulsating conduits and glowing energy nodes. At the center of the chamber was the Central Intelligence, a vast biomechanical entity that pulsed with a sickly green light. It was a horrifying sight, a twisted amalgamation of flesh and metal, its tendrils reaching out to connect with the ship's systems. Harper's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight. This was the heart of the Zephyr fleet, the brain that controlled everything. If they destroyed it, they could cripple the entire fleet, give humanity a fighting chance. "Plant the explosives," Harper ordered, his voice barely a whisper. Kane and Mitchell moved quickly, attaching the explosive charges to the conduits and energy nodes that fed into the Central Intelligence. The timer was set for 5 minutes, just enough time to get out of the ship before the entire chamber went up in flames. "Charges set," Kane reported, his voice tense. "Let's move," Harper said, his eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of movement. But just as they turned to leave, the Central Intelligence pulsed violently, its tendrils lashing out as if sensing the threat. The chamber filled with a blinding light, and a high-pitched screech echoed through the air, making Harper's ears ring. "Go, go, go!" Harper shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. The team sprinted toward the exit, the walls of the chamber shaking as the central intelligence thrashed in its final moments. Harper could feel the heat rising, the air growing thick with smoke and ash. They were so close to getting out, but the ship was collapsing around them, the explosion imminent. "Keep moving," Harper urged, his lungs burning as he pushed himself to run faster. The breach they had entered through was just ahead, but the ship was buckling under the strain of the explosion. Metal groaned and twisted as the structure began to give way, and Harper knew they had only seconds to escape. With one final burst of speed, they reached the Phantom. Harper shoved Kane and Mitchell into the ship, then jumped in after them, slamming the hatch shut behind him. "Get us out of here," Harper shouted. Mitchell didn't hesitate. She activated the engines, and the Phantom shot out of the breach just as the central intelligence exploded. The shockwave from the blast sent the ship spinning, but Mitchell fought to regain control, her hands steady on the controls. Harper watched as the Nexus disintegrated behind them, the massive ship tearing apart from the inside as the explosion ripped through it. The Zephyr fleet, now leaderless and disorganized, began to scatter, their ships breaking formation as they lost the guidance of the central intelligence. "We did it," Harper whispered, a wave of relief washing over him, but the relief was short-lived. As the Phantom sped away from the wreckage of the Nexus, Harper realized that their mission was only the beginning. The Zephyr had been dealt a devastating blow, but they weren't defeated yet. There would be more battles to come, more sacrifices to be made. As they returned to Fortress Excalibur, Harper's mind was already racing with the next steps. They had bought humanity some time, but the war was far from over. Harper would continue to fight, to lead his people through the darkness until they finally emerged into the light. As the Phantom docked in the hangar, Harper took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer, had faced enemies that should have crushed them without a second thought. But humanity was still standing, still fighting, and as long as he had breath in his body, Harper would make sure that humanity continued to survive.